Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for convening this hearing. And I'd like to welcome our witnesses from Microsoft, from FireEye, SolarWinds, CrowdStrike, who are here to help the committee's examination of what is the largest cyber supply chain operation ever detected. So we really do appreciate you being with us. As the chairman mentioned, we had extended an invitation to Amazon to participate. The opposite operation we'll be discussing today used their infrastructure, at least in part, required it to be successful. Apparently, they were too busy to discuss that here with us today, and I hope they'll reconsider that in the future. This operation involved, as already been said, the modification of the SolarWinds Orion platform, which is a widely used software product. It included a malicious backdoor that was downloaded, my understanding, up to 18,000 customers between March and June of last year. But the most insidious part of this operation was that it hijacked the very security advice promulgated by computer security professionals to verify and apply patches as they are issued. So there are many concerning aspects to this first of its kind, at least at this scale operation, that raise significant questions. My understanding is that if FireEye had not investigated an anomalous event within their own network in November of last year, it's possible that this would be a continuing and unfettered operation to this day. I think everyone's asking, despite the investment that's been made in cybersecurity collectively between the government and the private sector, how no one detected this activity earlier, as it appears that they have been in the system for close to 5 to 6 months before it was detected, maybe even longer, closer to a year. But the bottom line question is, how did we miss this? And what are we still missing? And what do we need to do to make sure that something like this, using these sorts of tools, never happen again? Second, I think there's great interest in knowing exactly what these actors did. Based on what we know, to include what government has stated publicly, the actor seems to have undertaken follow-on operations against a very small subset of the 18,000 networks to which they potentially had access. So aside from the mechanical aspects of removing a hacker from a network, what do we know about why these actors chose the targets that they did? What actions did they undertake within those networks? And what do we know that we do not know? I always love that question. What do we know that we do not know? In essence, what are the open questions now and in the future about these sorts of tools and how they could be used, or what do we still have open-ended that we are not able to answer at this time? And perhaps most importantly, who has the single comprehensive view of the totality of activity undertaken? And that's another thing that everyone has struggled with, is who can see the whole field here on this? And third, what is it going to take to rebuild and have confidence in our networks? And speaking with several of you in the days leading up to this, one of the hallmarks of this operation was the great care that was taken by this adversary to use bespoke infrastructure and tradecraft for each victim. Unlike other malware or ransomware cleanup operations, there is no template here that can be used for remediation. So what's it going to take to have confidence in both government and in the private sector networks again? Fourth, what do we need to do to raise the bar for the cybersecurity of this nation? Is cyber deterrence an achievable goal? How do we need to enhance cybersecurity information logging and sharing across the spectrum to protect against APTs in the future? And finally, though this is a question for the government rather than the witnesses here today, I think it's important for this committee to ask itself and to inform the members of the Senate, what does the United States government need to do to respond to this operation? Government officials initially stated this was an intelligence gathering operation. Just recently, however, the White House stated, quote, "When there is a compromise of this scope and scale, both across government and across the U.S. technology sector, to lead to follow-on intrusions, it is more than a single incident of espionage. It is fundamentally of concern for the ability for this to become disruptive," end quote. While I share this concern that an operation of this scale with a disruptive intent could have caused mass chaos, those are not the facts that are in front of us. Everything we have seen thus far indicate that at some level this was an intelligence operation, and a rather successful one, that was ultimately disrupted. While there are a myriad of ways for sovereign states to respond, I caution against the use of certain terms at this time until the facts lead us to the use of terms such as attack and so forth. I've always advocated for standing up to our adversaries. I think that's important. I will continue to advocate for that. But I want to know today what the actor's intent seemed to be and to the extent of the damage before we categorize it. It may very well reach that level. This committee and the rest of the Congress should consider what policies we need to pursue to better defend our nation's critical networks. In order to get a fuller view of the problem, perhaps we should consider mandating certain types of reporting, as the chairman already mentioned, as it relates to cyber attacks. We must improve the information sharing. Of this there is no doubt between the federal government and the private sector, and I look forward to being an active and constructive participant in these debates on these new issues, as I know every member on this committee is. And with that, I again want to welcome you and thank you for the testimony and the insights that you will share with us and the American people. It is important that the public understand the persistent information conflict that the United States finds itself in against nation-state adversaries like Russia, but also like China and Iran and North Korea. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.